Welcome to the ESCCA podcast, the official voice of the EuroLeague Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. I'm your host, Lovro Miljkovic. Join me for Skindecat episodes where we dive deep into the game-changing book, There is More Than One Way to Skin a Cat. With wisdom from 10 elite coaches, we'll break down their strategies, their ideas and approaches to success in elite basketball. Let's elevate the game together. Joining us today is Luka Svilar, a highly respected performance specialist and strength and conditioning coach with extensive experience in elite basketball. Luka has worked with top teams across Europe, including Bayern Basketball, Baskonia and Unix Kazan, combining academic expertise, holding a PhD in sports science with hands-on coaching at the highest level. He's also the mind behind the amazing book, There is More Than One Way to Skin the Cat, what makes him the logical choice for the first episode of Skin the Cat series. Let's dive into the episode. You have a lot of stuff to do, so let's dive into the main reason of our get-together. There's more than one way to skin a cat, since, as I mentioned, you're an author, editor, and the mastermind of the idea. I would like to know how and why was the book created?
Yeah, that's a nice question. And I don't believe that I'm a mastermind, because it's not like we are breaking codes or something. We're just writing a very practical and easy to read book. You know that I love writing. I like sharing my knowledge, and after making the essentials as my little baby, I realized that I want to do something now with the team of people, group of great people and amazing coaches. And that's how I came up with the idea of writing Skin the Cat. And I wanted to bring a little bit closer two worlds together, the European side and the American side. And this is the main reason why we have 5 authors from Europe and 5 from US.
As you mentioned, all of them now, not necessarily by name, but how did you choose the co-authors on this book? Because it's with a lot of amazing coaches from EuroLeague, some guys in the NBA, some in the NCAA. How did you came to that list of coaches?
Well, the list was pretty easy because I know way more amazing coaches and I'm in touch with a lot more. So it was not tough to make my list of people who I would like to have on a project like that. The only question at that moment was who I contact first, and if people who I contact will at that time be able to commit to the project, because I was not super strict but relatively strict with the time frame that we have. I wanted to start in summer, just dropping the idea on the table, and then use the first part of basketball season. Let's say I would give coaches a little bit of time during the preseason, because it's the most busiest part of the season for strength coaches. So I would give them the first part of the season, let's say from October till December, January, to answer questions. And then the second part of the season I would use to edit everything, to prepare the design and everything what you need in order to publish a book. So we can have project by the end of the season where we start with different summits, conferences, and when you create the buzz of education. So on the European side, it was very easy. I wanted to choose, first of all, the guys who I worked the most with. So they did not have an option to choose if they're going to be inside the project or not. It was kind of demanded from my side, but luckily we have such a good relationship. It's more like a friendship now. So with all of them, it was pretty easy to convince them, and that was pretty successful. And then on the American side, people who I contacted first were people who I'm in touch with the most frequently throughout the last couple of years, and who I respect highly. I had a couple of people who told me that they cannot commit at that time because they were working on some other projects. But as I said, the list was way longer and it was not so tough to find great people.
How long did it take you to put all the questions together? And did you go in the same, how would you say, I'm missing the word, chapter by chapter? Yeah, same order. Bravo, thank you. When you were creating the questions, or did you put it all together when the book was, let's say, finished?
I came up first with questions, prepared around 85 questions. Then I gave it to 2 of my friends, both of them highly experienced, one from more from basketball strength and conditioning, the other is more in soccer and rugby. So I gave them questions just to see how they will react, and both of them told me that they would like to see the end product. There were a few questions that they said that are kind of overlapping, so I got rid of like 5 questions maybe, and I kind of polished maybe 3 4 questions. So after their editing, I think we changed up to like 10% of the content when it comes to questions. And then, in order to be fair with the co-authors, what I did, I sat down, it was July. I sat down to answer questions myself, so I know exactly how much time you need to answer all of the questions, all 80 questions, because the book is all about that. Like I want everyone to answer every single question, so we can have 800 unique answers. It took me, okay, I was a little bit extreme because I was enjoying it, a lot, and it was July, so it was complete off season for me. And I devoted to one chapter a day. Some chapters it took me 2 days because of the tables and everything what I had to prepare, but I needed roughly like 15, 16 days, but I was really immersed. So I said like if someone needs to double that time, that's a month, and I will give everyone at least 2 to 3 months. As I said, from October until December, maybe January, it's definitely gonna be more than enough to prepare all the material. And it was enough for everyone. Some guys were extremely fast. Some guys had to take a little bit more time, which I respect for objective reasons.
Hmm.
Some of the coaches wear different hats and they are responsible for rehabilitation, for nutritioning on the road, for many things. And then if you have 2 or 3 or 4 players injured, then you have to take care of that. Obviously, it takes more of your free time if you are a true professional, and you want to do your job right. So this is something that happened with a couple of coaches where they had a couple of rough weeks in November, December, but everything ended up pretty good. We managed to deliver everything on time. I was lucky enough that also designer who I worked with wanted to start the project a little bit earlier than we planned. So we started to already work on the design of the book, and then we were kind of dropping the answers inside, which is normally not something that designers like to go back and forth. But this incredible designer is my sister, so she was kind of tolerable in that. And yeah, we managed to finish everything by late May, and very first week of June, the book was printed and ready for sales.
Amazing. We won't throw shade on anybody in mentioning who was the slowest one to give you the answers, but if you would like to share who was the quickest one to give you all the answers back.
On the European side, I think it was Robbie. Oh, for sure it was Robbie. And then from the Americans, I would say maybe Ramsey. Maybe Ramsey,
Okay.
if I remember well. But in general, I was very surprised how Americans took it so serious and they were on time. On time. Because I also have to say that not everyone was contacted at the same day or same week. So it's not fair to say that this guy was the last, because this
Yeah.
guy might be the one who I contacted like maybe a few weeks after someone else. The European guys, I told them basically on the same day, but with the Americans, it's just like I wanted to schedule a nice call to present the whole project. It was not just like a text message. Would you like to work on this project together? So it took a little bit time to get everyone on individual calls. So that's why it was a little bit, stretched out. As I said, everyone gave their best and they did very good job. So I cannot complain. It was very smooth project in terms of deadlines.
Most definitely, book is very very nice, and I recommend it to everybody in this field. What would you say is your goal with this? When you were creating it in your mind, what was something that you wanted to reach? What did you want to get into the hands of basketball strength and conditioning coaches?
For me, it's all about leaving some kind of legacy. I don't know how big the legacy is, but obviously having 10 people on the same project leave on a written paper, you leave a trace of their work, their philosophies, their approaches. And regardless of how much those philosophies will evolve throughout the years of being in the field, it's still some kind of legacy. And I think it serves as a guide to younger generations, younger coaches. So I would say that it's mainly to create the content that people can use in order to progress. Obviously, you will never have a book that is so comprehensive where you would say, oh no, like I just need that book and nothing else in my life. There are advantages and disadvantages of this kind of book. It's a problem solving book. It's very subjective in terms of the approaches, but this is what coaching is about. You have your own background, you have your own ways to problem solve. So I think it's just another contribution to the field. And in the end, it's also to connect some people together. Like I think I brought now the co-authors a little bit more together. And also everyone who's going to read the book can always contact us. At least my Instagram inbox is always open to any connection and to any discussion. So that was the whole point. Some people will come to Summit this year and talk to Kostas and talk about specific things. Maybe someone will text Reggie. Maybe someone will fly to Summer League and text Klaus or Ramsey or Matt or whoever will be there, if they can connect and just I believe that networking is not a must do in this field in order to create your own future. It's something that makes me at least the happiest for being in the field, because if you grind through from season to season and you don't connect yourself and you don't have any coffees, lunches, dinners with your colleagues, I think it's in one way, not completely, but in one way, a waste of time. Because in the end, one of the downsides, I believe, of our job is that it's very repetitive. The preseason into competitive season is just traveling for games, staying at home. Everything revolves around games. And you are balancing your private life on the side, depending on where you live. Maybe you're just there with family like me. Maybe you're missing friends, but you wait for that summer break. But then on the other side, if you don't have to become a big friend with everyone in the league, but by being in EuroLeague for so many years and now looking back of what I created in terms of my own network, I'm extremely proud of it. And very often when I'm interviewed or when someone asks me in podcast, like, what are your highlights from the experience in the field, I would always say the people. I've met also some assholes, not many, but I've learned how not to behave in team environment. But most of the people are good people, and some of the people became my friends that I'm very proud of. And this is the best part of the field, and then everything, like how someone will contact, some younger coach will contact Kostas, Matt, Mike, or whoever. This is the way how also I contacted some of them, and how I also invited someone for coffee. So I believe that is one of the goals of the book, so people can be encouraged and say, hey, I can contact this guy. Nowadays it's pretty easy through social media, and hopefully you will get an answer.
Amazing. I'll use your answer to connect it straight away with the first question from the book. As you were mentioning here, people, networking and everything, I chose a question from the chapter of communication. I think it's a pretty good question, because it might be an everyday question. So let's go into it, and the listeners will get the answer from you. So, while taking a short water break during team practice, the head coach comments to you that one player in the team looks very bad in terms of conditioning. What do you plan to do with the player and the coach once the practice is over?
Okay, I will try to avoid hot discussion with the coach right away. I would try that after the session is over, I would try to first talk to the player, hopefully in the locker room or in the weightlifting room or somewhere far from the team and far from the coach, and just ask him if everything is fine, if there is something wrong. Might be that he didn't sleep well, that the baby was sick for the last 3 nights. So we cannot really blame the level of conditioning, but it's more about him being fatigued, not ready to practice, and just saving up his energy for the upcoming days or a game or whatever. So when I would be aware of the objective or subjective reasons for his underperformance, then I would go to the office of the head coach. And as always, in very tricky situations, I would ask questions before I start sharing my opinion or before I jump to conclusions. So I would open the discussion with a simple question like, hey, coach, can you say something more about what is the issue? How do you see the player and whatnot? I would listen to the coach, maybe ask a little bit more questions to make things clear and to see what is really the viewpoint from like head coach, and then maybe I would share certain things with him. Now the big question is if that was just for that session comment, or he thinks that player is in a very bad shape for several practices, and now it was just the moment where he had to react and make comments towards me, and then we would try to talk about the solutions. I would not debate too much that he is wrong, even though player might have good reasons for underperforming, because obviously we have an issue. I rarely try to debate and prove someone wrong, especially immediately after making comments. But I would ask a coach also, like, what do you see as a potential solutions? And after he shares something with me, like he can say, he's not so important this week, do with him whatever you want. And then I might do something on my side, strength and conditioning. I might involve skills coaches to create certain conditioning drills so it can be more engaging for the player. Or if head coach says, well, I don't care. Now we don't have time. I just wanted to tell you, and we have to find solutions within the time when we work. Otherwise, we're gonna kill the guy. He cannot do the whole basketball session, and then if he goes for extra conditioning, he's gonna be even more dead tomorrow. So I
Yeah.
need to hear these kind of things from the head coach in order to be efficient in some kind of solution based on the information that I collected, hopefully based on some objective data that I also collected throughout the session. Is it heart rate monitoring or GPS data or LPS data? Whatever can help to analyze a little bit more his performance, and then trying to find solutions. As I said, solutions can be so many because we can arrive to the destination of being in shape in different ways. The only question is how much time we have and how much energy we can spend to build that level of endurance. Sometimes it is going to be an extra drills for 15 minutes post team practices if team practices are not so demanding. If team practices are very demanding, we have to be very specific on the intensities that we want to reach, but also not to overload player and burn him out during the session. So it might demand a little bit more substitutions. So this is something that is very, very complex. But as I said, there are always solutions to a problem. And one of the things that definitely I would mention to the coach, because it's a stressful environment, obviously it's a problem that needs to be fixed. I would just tell him, okay, let's work on it. Let's make somewhat plan, and let's give him 7 to 10 days, because we cannot make major adjustments to the plan and expect incredible changes in 3 to 4 days. This is not how endurance is built, not even in 7 to 10 days. But if he starts looking better in 7 to 10 days, it means that we are on the right path. And then in the period of next 3 to 4 weeks, I think we can do significant improvements.
What would you maybe say, just quickly comment in that situation, what would be the worst case scenario to do when it comes to that conversation with the coach?
The worst case would be that you believe that you did everything right as an SNC coach, and then you start proving coach wrong right away on the court, and you start talking about what you did in the last 3 weeks, and you start protecting player, but you are actually protecting your ego because you believe that you created the best program. You're not even like trying to get into the eyes of the head coach, because maybe his words were just chosen poorly. Maybe he says his conditioning is bad, but maybe he wants to just say that he doesn't have endurance in contact, or that he looks slow when he runs fast breaks. So maybe that's what he meant by conditioning. So it's I mean, I'm not gonna say you have to be stupid, but that would be the worst case scenario that you can do. You can start debating, or you start blaming a player, but then you are trying to protect yourself. Like those scenarios
Yeah.
Like that would be the worst case. And, you know, not even waiting for practice to finish because you have to say something either immediately or in the first water break. That would be probably the worst, you know, not giving
Yeah, amazing.
anyone time to digest a little bit the information, you know.
Yeah, I believe that's very important for especially young coaches to hear the other perspective. The first part that you said, it's a great advice for everybody, but to hear what not to do might be as important. Okay, to dive into the second question and final that we choose when it comes to questions from the book, it's from the chapter of testing. It's convenient because it's close to the time that we are in now. So some coaches might find themselves right now in this situation, so it might be good advice for them. At the end of January, your team signs a new player. The head coach considers him important and wants to see him on the court for 20 to 25 minutes per game. How do you approach this situation in terms of testing the new player's physical performance?
Well, we know that the in-season period is all about basketball, and that's our priority. Even the whole preseason, it's not about testing, it's about training. But there is definitely more time compared to in-season when we test. That's why in the teams where you play 2 to 4 games a week, it's very important that testing becomes part of your monitoring. So that's why they call it invisible testing. So if you can put someone on force plates as a part of your actually training, or you know, sometimes yes, you cannot measure body fat as a part of your training, so it has to be completely outside of the training, and then it's like a testing. So some of the things you cannot avoid from being a regular test, but some of the things you can kind of add to your training program, you know. And when it comes to this specific situation where in the middle of the season you have a new player, and obviously he's gonna get minutes, and he's not player who will have like 3 to 4 weeks to adapt to the team. He's gonna be, you know, with the team right away. I mean, I've learned this in so many situations in the past in Europe, but now it's going to the extreme here in US, where you literally can play back to back, and it happened to us like 2 weeks ago. We played back to back. We traded a guy. He played with us on Saturday, and he was traded after the game. He flew, and the next day he played for another team, and we played, you know, with another team. In that case, for example, to share it, I have a very good relationship with the team and strength coaches on the team where he signed. So on Monday, following Monday, he texted me and said, "Hey brother, what can you share with me in terms of like everything? Just share something about the guy." And then I obviously double check before sending him. I double check with our ATs and PTs a little bit of like medical, like recent medical history. I shared a little bit his scores on the Force platform. I told a little bit more about body composition, about the weights that we were using recently in the weightlifting room. Overall, you know, about the guy, how he eats, what kind of questions he asks, what kind of conversations we have. And this is something that I would also like, that's what I shared with him. And this is something that I'm also looking for when we have a new player. So to give you an answer to your question or the question from the book, it would be along these lines. Thing would be to collect as much information as possible from his previous team. Second would be to talk to the player and collect information from the player. You know, we don't have to go and do immediately 3 RMs and 5 RMs. If he tells me, hey, recently I was not lifting very heavy for the last month, you know, I felt so and so, and the bench press I did with 2 dumbbells of 40 kilos, that was my max, and my trap bar deadlift was not more than 100 kilos. Enough, you know, enough. And then in the middle of the season, we have to decide either you as a one-man band or hopefully as a group, health and performance group, together with your ATs, PTs, and hopefully more people in the strength and conditioning department, you can sit down and talk about the needs. What is something that we really need to test? I've heard that this guy who we signed is prone towards fat gain. Okay, then definitely in the next 3 days, we want to test him with caliper or whatever technology we have. You know, this is something that we want to do ASAP. We play the next game in 4 days. We're gonna do with the whole team Force platforms. Okay, he's gonna be on Force platform for a simple test. And then the week after, we might dive deeper into some other tests. But this week, he's just gonna do, you know, 3 CMJs. You know,
Hmm.
we will try to be as selective as possible, and we will select, I would say, 3 to 5 things that we would like to test, and we will check the schedule that we have in front of us, and hopefully within 10 to 14 days we can knock those tests out, with like without making it very annoying for the player, and trying to put it as smooth as possible into the training and game schedule.
Amazing. I don't know if it's possible to trade a player later, let's say in the season, closer to the playoff, or maybe even in the playoff, but just for the question, how would you approach the same situation, but let's say that you have 4, 5, maximum 6 weeks left into the season? Would you even bother with testing, or would you go with the same approach of gaining just the current information that you can gain and go off that?
For me, it is collecting data in terms of testing is all about making a change. And if you have, let's say, 5 weeks until the end of the season and one of the players got injured and you signed another player who is coming just to finish the season and he got like 5 weeks contract, I'm gonna test only the things that I would work on and I would retest somehow. So everything else that is kind of cannot be changed or I cannot impact, I would definitely not consider as, as something that I need to test. If someone tells me from like, I don't know, a scout who signed him on our team says, hey, please, this guy is incredibly vertical. Can you please test him, on the fourth platform so we can have his data and see a little bit, da 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 da. Or we might consider him resigning if I talk to his agent. If something comes along these lines, I might, add something, but it's because of someone from the front office asked, because there is something related either to our academy or to the future, potential future. But if no one says anything, I'm not going to test just to test. I would test in order to make the change. And I'm a huge believer in many tests, but I don't do all of them every single season, because I know that on certain things I won't be able to work as much as I would like to, and so on and so forth. So I try to be selective in terms of like, and very objective in terms of like what we can really improve and what I am going to work on. Because years I was doing the movement screen, and then when the season starts, I don't devote. I'm not saying I don't have time. You always have time. But I realize that I don't devote so much time on mobility training. So what is the point of doing so many movement screen tests, this and that, and then, when the season starts, you are not working on it. So I'm going to work on it, then I'm going to test it.
Does that have something to do with the type of the team that you have? Let's say you have a crazy bouncy team, and okay, it might be interesting to see, as you mentioned earlier, how high they jump and similar, but would you test their counter movement jump? Because let's be real, you're probably not going to work on the improvement of that since they're already pretty explosive.
Yes, I would test them for other reasons. One reason might be like if we say, so let's say we have a younger team but bouncy team. You will not test them maybe for tracking the improvements. First of all, maybe you will not work so much during the season on vertical plyometrics. Or second reason why is just because, it's very questionable how much you can improve based on their on-court loads. So I would test maybe because of once a week, because of the chronic fatigue, just to have a baseline, to see deviations from the standards. And also, if we have a young bouncy team, but few of the guys are pretty skinny, and we have hypertrophy program for them with very good nutritional program, and we expect that they will gain 3, 5, 7 pounds at least until they leave us, then one of the concerns would be if they gain more weight, are they going to start losing the bounciness? As long as we are gaining weight, but the bounce is there, it's a functional body mass, So it can always be pretty complex because we don't use always one test for one thing. It can serve us in different ways.
Yeah, makes sense, most definitely. Okay, since of time limitation and we'll have all the authors in this series, this is all that you'll answer when it comes to questions from the book. But I'll read just a few more to give a little bit of a glimpse into the book to all the listeners of the podcast. So here I choose one from strength and power training. I won't read the whole question, but just to give a little bit the idea. It's pretty nicely made. It's a off-season approach of all the 10 authors for a player who wants to gain 3 to 4 kg, and it has detailed workouts from all the authors for a 9-week plan. I like it a lot because it's practical. A lot of stuff from the book is practical, and that's really amazing. I think that usually in the books from our field, we miss that specific practical stuff, and you can find it here. So it's a huge benefit. One more from load monitoring and management. One important aspect of load management is a coach's organization of compensatory work. How do you determine the optimal amount of work for every player? What guides you in the process, and provide an example. Again, a huge one. Since it's an example, it's again a practical one. I have a book right here with me. You guys as well, listeners, the ones that are watching the podcast, you can get your copy pretty easily, either with a simple direct message to Luka, to other authors, to the ESCCA profile on social media. Maybe there'll be some other way to order, but this is for now the simplest one. Luka, would you like to add any comment before we close this part of the book?
No, you said everything. Thank you for promoting a little bit the book. Definitely helpful, but I think on the other side, our society is so small that I believe that everyone more or less knows about the book. The only question is when they're gonna devote their time to order the book and sit and enjoy it, because I think it's a great book for like self-reflection, not only to see what other people think, but it's very engaging regardless of being a young or experienced coach. You can just read the question and then answer first, in your mind, or you can write something down and then you can read all of the answers and see where you are and how different you are, how unique you are. So it's pretty engaging. I think that's the biggest benefit of the book for everyone who's gonna read it.
Amazing. Okay, to go a little bit into the field and time that you're right now. I mentioned in the intro you were in the EuroLeague, Eurocup as well, now NBA, NBA G League. So just to get some answers on one jobs and the other jobs, let's just start with the simple one. What would you say now from your experience? You are now there for what, over half of a year in US? Yeah, something like that. Nice. Okay. What are some key differences between working in European basketball versus the NBA system?
If we talk about the NBA system, because that was my first touch with the American soil, you can see pretty significant difference in the number of people who are around the team. You have 18 to 20 players for the preseason training camp, and then you have, I don't know, 35, 40, 45 people working around, and everyone has a specific role, and everyone can contribute. Everyone is super professional, but there is, up to 15 basketball coaches. Half of them dress up for practices. They play against players. They defend. They sweat out. Some of them go through crazy workouts and they have to be ready. They go to weightlifting room, they ask for programs, they go for treatments. It's very professional on any side, whoever you are. And uh, then you have 10 to 15 people from health and performance side, pretty significant number of people who are involved in media, basketball operations people. So it's just more people around the team, and I think you just have to quickly adapt to the environment where everyone has a specific role, and there is way more communication in between everyone who is involved. There is way more meetings on a daily basis, weekly basis, just so everything can be communicated the right way. Obviously, there are also ways to use phone and specific chats and specific applications to communicate as efficiently as possible. That would be like the main difference between the systems. When it comes to organizing the week, planning the day, when it comes to training session, when it comes to programming weightlifting sessions, recovery sessions, I mean, this is pretty much the same. It's in the end, this is what is our job, and we have to know how to do it, or at least at the given moment do our best. But it's not different, it's not different.
Yeah.
So it's more about like communicating on time, certain things, being involved in all of these communication channels, and then just at the end of the day, deliver what was supposed to be delivered. There are some slight differences, like medical department at the NBA and G League level is a little bit different. In Europe, we tend to, like, professional teams who travel a lot, they tend to have full-time doctor who is with the team on a daily basis and traveling also with the team, while some lower level teams might have a doctor who comes there only for games and sometimes travel with the team, because when you travel there is another doctor from the home team there. Here you have doctors and specialists for like surgeries, for different, like, knee health, ankle health, low back health. They're all specialists who are consultants, but people who are main responsible for emergency situations and who are controlling day-to-day stuff when it comes to the health of not only players but personnel are the athletic trainers. That's what they are trained for, and that's what their main responsibilities. This is the reason why AT, the head AT, sits in the first row on the bench, and he's the very first chair. Normally, he's the very first chair next to the scorer's table, and he has full responsibility for any emergency situation. And then this is something that was pretty new to me. They take very seriously the training that they do every single season, first aid and all those things. I believe this is something that we miss in Europe, a little bit more seriousness for the specific situations, because yes, we have emergency situation team during games somewhere over there in the corner of the arena, but we have to know that we practice so much alone, and
Yeah.
we need to be trained, and we need to be trained so we can react in the best way possible. So this is something that Americans take very, very seriously, and this is something that could be potentially different. I mean, it's just, as I said, like, bigger performance staff, health and performance personnel. Preseason is different. In the NBA, preseason is around 15 to 20 days, maybe 8 to 10 days of training camp, and then 8 to 10 days of just playing games at home and on the road. In the G League, preseason is like 12 days long, with maybe two friendly games. So it's very, very short training camp. It is demanded that players come in way better shape than what we demand back in Europe. It's kind of improving. We are also trying to standardize certain things through the association and through EuroLeague Players Association. So we know basic standard, but it's still kind of developing. But I believe that there is a lot of minor differences, but not something so major that it changes our job as SNC coaches. I believe if you have experience in Europe for 3 to 5 years, and hopefully you did those 3 to 5 years on 2 to 3 teams, then it's you're good to go. Like, you will not be completely shocked or amazed, or with the situation that how NBA and G League operates. You're a professional, you are there to work, you have to deliver whatever your responsibility is, and basically that's it.
You mentioned the assistant coaches being involved in some part of practices, playing against the players. Was there a part of the practice that you wanted to be involved, that you were like, oh, I would like to play, I don't know, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 5-on-5, shooting
No,
contest?
no chance, no chance. Like, I don't like to go there because, first of all, my level of skill is shit compared to theirs. Second of all, I don't believe that that's our responsibility. If you are asked to assist, like, let's say in a shell drill or whatever, if you have to be that corner guy who passes the ball, for sure, I'm
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But my main responsibility is always with the towel to clean the floor if someone's on the ground. I didn't have even a desire, because that's not where my mind goes. I respect players. I respect the time when they train, and I was not even thinking about doing something there on the court besides of just warming the team up and be there on the side to support and do if someone asks me to do something. There are enough bodies, there are enough experienced people, former players who assist the team for that. And even if I was more experienced as a basketball player, I would try not to get involved because then it kind of collapses with my main responsibility, and that this is strength and conditioning, and there is always time to play basketball. Good thing about the NBA environment is that as there are more people on staff and there is more engagement from the front office, they like to play pickup very often, so you can go and play, and it's very often 5-on-5. It's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we cannot find 6 guys to play 3-on-3. It's very often 5-on-5, and I played during the training camp a couple of times. I was probably the worst. Well, I was for sure the worst on the team, but they let me play. I enjoyed it, and this is the moment to play and have fun. When people from the office, when there is a mixed group, like team building thing, that's the moment where I might play, but in practices, for sure, no.
Makes sense, most definitely. When it comes to the physicality part, EuroLeague and NBA, not from some objective parameters, but from just your eyes, what you see from the sidelines, what would you say is the biggest difference here and there? EuroLeague, NBA.
Physicality wise.
Yes.
I was thinking about it for a long time, and then I realized that there might be a little bit more intense game in terms of the outputs, vertical jumps, sprints, decelerations, changes of direction. Unfortunately, we cannot have that data because it's not allowed to be published. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I collect a little bit more data on certain things. Maybe in my own lab, I can compare and just know it for myself. I have those data. I haven't dove into it. Maybe I will, just to see if they're really the peak demands, if they are different. What I believe the main difference between Europe and the NBA is in the frequency of those peak movements, because here you have a concentration of pure physical talent. And what you see in Europe once a week in practice or once a week in a game, here you see it more often. But
Mm-hmm.
not because they are so better, it's just because there are more players who are at that level. So the concentration is just bigger, greater here. And what a crazy block shot that I can see in Europe once in 2 weeks that you see on highlights. Here you see very often in practices, every single game you see at least one block shot like that. So this is something that is definitely interesting, but it's not so strange because the concentration of the pure talent is here. On the other side, another part of physicality is the contact game, and this is something that I was surprised with the most. You know how we always say in Europe, there is no defense, there is no this and that in the NBA compared to Europe. Okay, it can be a little bit of like part of the officiating,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the rules and the adaptation of rules, the evolution of rules. This is allowed in Europe, this is not allowed in the NBA, and vice versa. Contact with forearm, contact with two forearms. These body checks, like they tend to change rules, and it's tough to follow what is changing. But I think the main difference that I could see was once players go into a contact, here they go like full power. Like you can really hear some, like I would sit on the first bench in EuroLeague because that's where you sit. Sometimes you sit next to the head coach and assistant, sometimes you sit at the end of the bench, but you are on the court. And here I can be sitting in a corner and I can still hear how they hit each other and how they make contact. And sometimes when they fall on the ground, it's just nasty. It's just crazy how hard the impact can be and how tough the contact can be. So this is something that I respect highly. It was a little surprise to me how physical really the league is and how physically really players play. I think a lot of Americans got to learn how to deal with that kind of contact through childhood experience in American football, and they know how to receive a contact and they know how to fall on the floor. So that's why you don't have so many injuries post contact. But yeah, it's just like a little theory that I have. Doesn't have to be true.
Do you think that maybe that's something that European players who are coming to the NBA are missing, being used to the contact? And that's maybe why they get lost in the NBA, or why some Americans who went from high school, college, NBA to the EuroLeague look like they play easier in Europe. Would you say that's maybe the parameter that makes sense in both scenarios?
Yes, that could work. I mean, every case is specific, but I
Yeah,
think we can definitely put it that way. And then, if you have decent skills and weaker body, then your skill in this league will suffer. You will suffer as a player. You have extreme skill and, still some weaknesses in the body, you might compensate to certain level. So it's a debate of like, the body that Nikola Jokic has or Luka Doncic. It's that like they're super, super extremely skilled that, we can approach their physicality in so many different ways. But then you have like someone who is not so skilled, and then you can see their big improvement in a year of being in the league because they gained that strength. And you can still see many players who are suffering who haven't made so drastic changes in their body composition and their, physicality.
yeah.
Not also only about bringing more body mass or building more muscle. It's also about learning how to play with that new frame that you have. And someone needs to teach you that,
Yeah.
skill coach or whoever you have or you hire during the off season.
Yeah, one player that combined the two of gaining physicality, gaining body mass and talent, I believe was Michael Jordan. He even mentioned in The Last Dance that one summer where he chose to gain muscle to fight with the bad boys of Detroit, and I believe that made a huge difference for him to get to that first championship and then just to keep on going and going and going. Again,
And he broke that threshold. He had extreme skill. He broke that threshold of not being bullied. And then he
yeah.
didn't have to go further in his, frame size, to be at the level where he was. He reached that threshold and then everything was pretty easy for him.
Yeah, for him it was definitely. Okay, to finish off with last few questions because I know you have to go. One more thing that I was interested when it comes to EuroLeague and NBA. Are there any unique demands in EuroLeague that don't exist in NBA or vice versa?
Unique demands. As we said, like the preseason length, you have to adapt to that. If you want to play in the NBA and G League as a European guy, you don't need to learn how to trash talk, but you need to at least understand trash talk. I think as coaches and as players especially, we have to be ready for the trades. And when we work with the G League team, you have to be ready for the assignments. So you can just 2 hours before the game, you can hear that the player from the main team is coming to play the game. And he might stay for a couple of days or he might leave after the game. So be aware of the two-way contracts, assignments. This is something that is very unique. So in the G League, you might have a team roster of 10 guys because very often you have in and out guys and you have to be in constant communication with the main team on how to handle these things so players can stay as safe as possible and then keep performing at the high level. I think demands of the NBA in terms of like charter flights, you cannot survive playing this league without charter flights. And this is something where EuroLeague is getting closer because they understand the huge benefit of charter flights, but still playing on average 2.5 games per week still allows you to use sometimes commercial flights. If this number is going to go to 3 games per week or higher, that's the moment where there's going to be no other chance but to do charter flights. And yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit different culture. On my team, I have in the G League, we have all of the players are Americans. So there is basically no one who is foreign player, while in the Europe it's different. So just a little bit of understanding the culture and which cultures dominate on the team is important. But as I said, like they're sometimes unique, sometimes just small, certain demands that you have to adjust to. at the end of the day, it's basketball world. It's well known. It's a team sport. It's not so different.
Yeah, you reminded me of one question. It will have to be a quick answer so you don't get lost in time. You mentioned a player coming from main team to the G League team. There was one situation, I believe, a month ago. I won't mention the team because it's not important, but a G League player played, I believe, in the afternoon for the G League team, and at night he played for the main team. How would you help maybe that player from your standpoint in that time in between games to, let's say, recover him to play? Maybe he won't play at night, but let's say that he gets 8 to 12 minutes.
Before the NBA game, very often you can use a chapel. There is like
Mhm.
by chapel, and you can go and pray. So I can take the player and we can go together there and pray that he will get minutes, but that he will survive. No, not joking about it. Like I highly respect that they organize this for players. It was something very new and very unique to me, and this is pretty cool because a lot of players are religious, spiritual, and they take advantage of that. And besides of praying for the best, it would be a standard thing like. Uh, if the game is like, let's say, morning hours to midday, definitely as soon as possible have a good meal. If we have to wait for a meal for more than 45 minutes to 1 hour because of some reasons, definitely eat some fruits and drink protein shake to start recovering as soon as possible. Maybe put on compression socks, go and eat something well, try to go and relax and take a nap. Maybe take a nice long stretching routine on a stretch table just to relax the body. Just to relax the body. It's not about the effects of stretching. It's more like stretching, breathing, relaxing on the table without using too much of your phone. Hopefully take a nap if possible somewhere, and then just eat again something that is easy digestible 2 to 3 hours before the NBA game. Go do your spiritual thing if you believe in it. If like it was a joke before a little bit what I would do, but I seriously believe that this can really help, because if you set your mind prior to the game towards that goal, you're gonna be good. And then just follow your routine that you have normally before the NBA game, because I believe that routine is something where you kind of prime yourself both in terms of the body and the mind. Go through routine. Maybe if your routine is usually very intense and very long, maybe you can cut it down a little bit just because of the energy expenditure that you had 6 to 8 hours prior to this. This can be something that can be adjusted, and yeah, just be ready for the game. That's
Amazing answer. You almost lost me in the first part of the answer. I couldn't stop laughing. Okay, to finish off, what lessons from your time in the EuroLeague have proven valuable in the NBA G League?
I think all of the lessons that I learned from communication part, like how to communicate with the head coaches, with the assistants, with players. Obviously, it's something that helps me in any job where I go, regardless of the league. So this is something that is just pure gold when it comes to experience. I also learned how to deal with wins and losses, big wins and big losses. I've been on the teams that were fighting for championships, and also won championships. So I just learned how to deal with it, and it helps a lot to stay calm when we win, when we lose, but also to understand players when they win and lose and they perform and they underperform. Also learning everything about typical basketball injuries and how to stay supportive, be empathetic in those moments when a player gets injured, and also how to communicate when injury happens. I try to stay on the side and not to play a telephone game, how we say it in Croatia, broken telephone. I don't want to be a part of the telephone game, to whisper what AT said and, to front office just so I can be the first one to tell to GM he's going to be 3 weeks out. And then, because that can only bite you in the ass. He might be
Yeah,
out only for a week. He might be out for 2 months. So if you can stay out and not to play the telephone game is pretty important. I think that's a valuable lesson. It's always very useful to connect with everyone on the staff, because in the end you spend with them so much with their, like, sometimes you spend more time with them than with your family. Not everyone needs to become your best friend, but to learn a little bit about other people's life and be supportive in certain things and invite them for coffee, lunch, dinner on the road is something that can definitely boost up day-to-day operations and how players look at you. So this is something that from Europe I brought here, and I try to connect with people and have dinners, go for a beer, go for coffee, to a certain extent. If someone invites me for a beer at 11, I might say sometimes no, because, tomorrow is going to be very demanding. But most of the time I try to be there, be social, and be part of the team. Something that was also useful in Europe, in many teams where I was taking the responsibility of nutrition side and supplementation, and it definitely helps in the G League because it's a valuable piece of the work that we can deliver, and it's different from the NBA. In the NBA we have a girl who takes care of the team in an amazing way, and I can only be there to maybe assist from time to time, putting more water in the fridge or something like that, because she does outstanding job. But in the G League it's a little bit different, and I can always consult her, which is great to have another opinion. But it is something that I have learned, and I still have to learn, but I learned enough so I can take care of that and take full responsibility. So this is something that helped a lot in delivering the best me to the athletes. So yeah, there are probably some other lessons, but I would wrap up with these.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much one more time, first of all, for your time and sharing some of your experiences, your knowledge. One more time, guys, book is available. So maybe the best way, contact Luka or the ESCCA social media profiles. I believe Luka and everybody that's using the other profile will get back to you as quick as they can, and you can have this book in your hands. Luka, good luck today, first of all, and wish you all the best in the season and in general.
Thank you.
Amazing. See you. Bye.
Bye. Super.
You've been listening to the ESCCA podcast, the voice of the EuroLeague Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. I'm your host, Lovro Miljkovic. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, follow us on YouTube, and visit our website at escca.net. Discover exclusive benefits with our membership program, stay ahead with our newsletter, and get the latest updates on Can't Miss live and online events. Until next time, stay strong and keep elevating the game.